All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Future Group Friday. Full disclosure, I am coming off a little bit of a head cold, so if I'm a little nasally, I apologize. I might have to turn the camera off if that becomes a bigger problem. But for those who are not aware, Future Group Friday is a weekly stream that I've been running for the past 2 months, maybe, give or take. Working towards better communication between the Future Group development team and the larger community. I had some comments on one comment on my YouTube video last week where somebody had found this series and had no idea what TagPro was or what it was about. And they were like, I have no way of getting to your game from your streams. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what TagPro is before we get into it. For those who are not aware, TagPro is a free-to-play browser-based capture the flag game. It is an online multiplayer game, 4 versus 4 typically. And all you need to play is a Google account if you want your name to be displayed. Otherwise, you can just sign up without anything and be a sumball in public games. But that's the basics of it. Hello, Jendi, returning chatter 45. So, our plan for today is going to follow the usual starting point. We're going to go through development updates from the past week. Then we will shift gears, talk about some of the candy board posts, the feedback from the community, things people want to be added into the game. And then we will finish up with a couple of feature building slots. I think I actually have 2 things I want to build this week. So again, let me know if the audio is a little bit off. My voice is a little scratchy this week. So hopefully it's still coming through okay. But yeah, so I'll give it about a minute before we get started with that. I had also posted a form last week with like an open response. If you wanted to submit any questions, you could ask, and I would answer them on stream. I got 0 responses to that, so I guess everybody is happy with what I've been answering so far. But if that changes, I'll put that form link in the chat in just a moment for anybody who wants it in the future. And then we'll get started. Oh, unless I lost the form, that'd be awkward. Come on. I just had this. I know it exists. Huh. So there appears to be a mistake on my end. I just opened up my drive to find that form, and it opened up an entire album of wedding photos from a wedding I was just at that are not supposed to be on my TagPro email. Oh, here it is. Okay, so that's a problem I'll have to figure out later. But okay. Anyway, here is the form link. I'm going to drop that in the chat, and I will pin that. If you have any questions for me that you don't want your name attached to, feel free to fill that form out. I will answer them on stream the next time I am live. Show us the photos. No, I will not be doing that. So let's get started with our development updates, things that have happened between last week and now. Just to refresh myself, last week was October 3rd, and there's been a lot of talk from me for the most part about how close we are to a release, and unfortunately that has not changed. We are still close to a release, which means that we have not met the standards that we needed for a release. And so I'll talk through a little bit more of the specifics in a moment, but basically we have everything almost ready, and then we found a pretty big chunk of one of the important features in this release that needed to be rewritten, and it's currently being rewritten, but that's going to push us just past the window that we had for a release at the start of the month, and it's going to force us to release instead at the end of the month, because one of our developers is not going to be available in the middle of the month, and we kind of need him around to get this release out. But let's talk about what happened between last week and now, starting off with a weird one, which is ping balancing. So this is a branch that Orchid created as just like a fun side project, kind of similar to my my reinforcement learning bots that I had started. He tried to make a ping balancing option for groups, where if you were playing a game with somebody who is farther away from the server than you are, it would balance your pings so that both players are playing on a level playing field. So just to put some numbers on it, if I'm playing against a player from Europe, but we're on Chicago, my ping would be forced up to 100 to have us be equal connection to that server, instead of me being 30 or 40 and them being 100. It's not a thing that we're going to add to the base game, but it is a fun thing that we want to see if we can try in groups. So Orchid had some extra time to work on that, and it was like right after my stream last week that came in. So that was a little side tangent for things that actually are for this release. We've got a bunch of reviews coming in. So this is what I was talking about with the delay. That feature that is live games that are active on the site right now, trying to figure out when they're going to end, what players are in them, displaying information about them, all of that. We found a pretty big issue at the core of it that had to be fixed. So Bash came in and submitted a pretty large review that I'm not going to go through the details of right now. But basically that is what is going to be taking a little extra time for us to finish. So everything I'm scrolling past right now, there are about 45 comments just back and forth on this. So it's nothing too exciting for the stream, but it's important that we get these things in a good spot, because if this isn't working properly when the release goes live, we are going to end up kind of in the same place that we were after the original ranked release, which is that we have this really cool thing that we've built. It mostly works, and we want to move on and start working on other things, but we're so stuck on this one bug fix that we need to keep coming back to because we didn't get it right the first time. So this time we're trying to just get it right the first time, make sure it works, and then we can actually move on to the in-game shop, which I've been trying so hard to get us started on soon. So that's where things are at. We are looking at a release probably October 22nd, I believe, is the target date, just to put that out there for everybody else. And we'll see what happens between then and now. Hopefully we can get some testing started in the next few days on TagPro Secret, and I'll be in touch with that. So that is Battle Pass. No Battle Pass. That is the first couple days. Then we had some changes to the scoreboard. We're trying to figure out the best way to display at the end of a ranked game how much your score has adjusted. So right now, if you come back, so you go into a ranked game, you can see your skill score in the pregame launcher. That's all working fine. At the end of the game, maybe you go to your profile and you look and you see what your new skill score is. You went up or down a couple of points. That's all good. But we were trying to have it be shown in the game itself. So when you finish the game, you know, okay, I went up 4 skill points or whatever for that win that you just had, or you went down 5 for that loss, or whatever the number ends up being. So we're trying to figure out the best way to display that in game. We had a little bit of back and forth on this because one option we had was to create a separate list of all the players and then show their before and their after and the delta of that game, which worked okay. It's a lot of information to have on the screen. It's like you're duplicating the list of players who were already there. But if we wanted to add it straight to the scoreboard, like just adding another column, we don't have enough width with all the other stuff that we're already displaying there. So my push was to just put the delta and not have the before and after, and maybe have the before and after on hover. I think currently where the branch stands now is that it's a separate list with the before, after, and the delta all like separated below the actual scoreboard. So we'll see where that actually ends up. It's still an ongoing discussion on the future group, but if you have any opinions on that, feel free to share. And yeah, so that was that came in. Then we've got some changes to the launcher, like that pregame thing, where we were trying to decide if, when, and how to display win probability, because for a game to be created, it has to fall within the 60 to 40 boundaries, where there cannot be a greater than 60% chance or lower than 40% chance for a team to win, to make sure the game is fair, basically. We had originally been displaying that in this upcoming branch, but we decided that if players knew the win probability before the game happened, it might influence how much they actually try in that game, and we weren't sure if that was really going to be a net positive. So we're going to display what the win probability was after a game, so you can say, okay, we were favored or we were not favored, but we're not going to display like, oh, this team has a 58% chance of winning this game, because it might just influence people before they get into it. So we'll see how that shakes out, but that was the last update that came in. So that's stuff that was pushed to the actual servers. There were some other things happening behind the scenes. We're going to spend some time on what I was chewing on this week at the end of this stream, talking about tiers and the sizes of tiers and how many players are in each tier and all that. But I haven't pushed that branch to the repository yet, so there's nothing that I can show from that channel there. So that is the summary there. Unfortunately, not a lot to share. And like I've mentioned the past couple of weeks, as we get closer and closer to a release, there's less and less stuff to actually brag about, because it's really just getting down to the nitpicky stuff, trying to make sure it works properly, it looks right, and it's not really new fancy things that we're building. So hopefully we can get this wrapped up soon. I keep saying that, I keep meaning it, but we're not quite there yet. So with that said, any questions about development stuff, obviously feel free to ask or fill out that form that I've pinned in the chat. And otherwise, we are going to move on to our canny board post. So we had 3 requests coming in this week that we're going to talk through. I'm on the old one from last week, but the first of them was from Kaiser Sozi. Expand the win counter for flares. So this says, I like the win counter for the next achievable degree flare, but I'd like a counter on all of the degree flares that I don't have yet. So Kaiser is referring to a feature that was added about a year and a half ago, I think, where if you go to your profile and you look at your flares, this is all the flares that you own, obviously, and then you have an all section. And in the all section, you can see flares you do not own. They are grayed out. And he's talking about down here in the corner. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can see what it looks like. There is a progress bar so you can see how close you are to the next degree flare. So it says you only have 300 wins to go. This is for me to earn the wildflower flare at 295 degrees. I'm currently at 290, so I've got 5 degrees to go to get there. So what Kaiser is requesting is that we have this same progress bar shown for all upcoming degree flares instead of just the next one that you have to earn. So I have some opinions on this. I'm actually the one who built this thing, and I explicitly decided not to add them to all. I don't remember why I made that decision though. So I'm trying to remember off the top of my head if there was a good reason not to show all of them. I know that we can calculate the bars pretty easily before rendering this page. So I'm not sure. I mean, does it really matter to know that information? I guess it's cool to see you have this many wins left before you get to 360. It's not going to move very much because it's a lot of wins. Even I at 290 with 26,000 games played, like I'm still not really that close to 360. So that bar is going to be pretty underwhelming, but I guess it's cool to see kind of the spacing of all of them. I don't really have a reason not to do this, so I guess I'm going to go ahead and submit a ticket for it. But yeah, if anyone disagrees with that, let me know. So we're going to say display progress bar for all upcoming degree flares. On the profile page, under the all header for flares, we display the number, of wins required to earn the next degree flare and a progress bar. Show this for all future degree flares instead of only the next degree flare. I think that's pretty straightforward. Not sure how the bar itself actually looks, but the number itself, wait, what? Not sure how the bar itself, oh, it looks like this. That's the bar. It looks like a bar. Oh, you like how this will look with the other ones, where if you're 10 degrees, this is just going to be an empty bar on the arc reactor. Yeah, I mean, it's just going to, like, you'll have all of these out there. You'll see the bar is just smaller and smaller as you get farther along. So I think is what Grant is saying, potentially, correct me if I'm wrong, Grant, is that show the bar only for the next one, but show the degrees or the wins required for the next flare for all of them. So if I hover over the sun, it would say, I don't know what the number is, 800 wins required for this flare, but it wouldn't show the progress bar until that's actually your next one. Is that what you're getting at? Because I don't hate that at all, actually. If that's a nicer presentation than just all these bars. But Giving the value feels like what Kaiser wants. Let's read it again and we'll close her. Yeah, okay, that is what he's saying. Yeah, I just read this wrong. So the win counter, not the progress bar. The counter on all the degree flares. Okay, you've convinced me. I'm sold. So instead of show this, show the wins, whoops. Show the wins required for all future degree flares instead of only the next degree flare. Keep the progress bar only for the next achievable flare. Boom. All right, that's going to be a low effort enhancement. And we have a relevant county post. Let me grab that real quick. Okay, let's submit that, and then let's go back here, say planned. Feature request has been submitted internally, has not yet been assigned to a developer. Will be included when time allows. Boom. All right. Oh my God. Okay. Taco flare for National Taco Day. I have been once again inundated with requests for a flare. We've shifted from hot dogs to tacos, I guess. He did send me a flare. It was the wrong dimensions. It was a 16 by 16 flare. Or is it 18 by 18? I forget. But okay. Kaiser wants a annually recurring Taco Day flare. I think I'm going to merge this in with the hot dog flare because if we add annual flares, it's just going to be all of them. So we're going to put those together. And we are planning eventually to make a hot dog flare. Yeah, okay, moving on. Open in new tab. For the homepage, following any news links, it should open in a new tab and not take you out of the game's website. This should be true for any other links as well. If we're directing anyone away from the website, it should open in a new window. That feels extremely reasonable to me. I'm kind of surprised we don't do that already. Let's take a look here. If I click on this, oh yeah, son of a gun. Okay, so yeah, the news section, what else do we have for external links? We've got code of conduct. Yeah, all this stuff. Yeah, I think I agree that all of these should open in a new tab instead of opening here. What about like the tutorial? Okay, the tutorial does that.
How to play TagPro in 4 minutes.
Thank you, Roland. There's me. Does that open in a new tab? Got me curious now. That does. Okay, so we're kind of inconsistent in our application there. Okay. Yeah, so I think all links that are not somewhere else on the TagPro site should be redirecting to a different tab. And that's a very easy thing to do on the back end. It's just adding one little word, basically, to an item that exists. So that's super straightforward to do, and that feels like an easy sell for me. So for all update all external links on the TagPro site to open in a new tab via blank instead of leaving TagPro. For some links, tutorial, Twitch streams, the destination is opened in a new window. This should be the case for all external links, such as the Reddit posts in the news feed, the footer links, code of conduct. Is there anything else on other tabs? I don't think anything else really directs outside of the site. This is all the volunteers. Maybe there's that's a Reddit thing, so that would have to be the Discord links. Yeah, so some of the leaderboard tab stuff. Comp stuff, yeah, good point. Yep, the competitive tab. We've got all of these. This is Discord, this is Reddit. Yeah, and all of these open in the same tab. Yes, all that stuff. Sorry, I keep blinding everybody. Leaderboard links, competitive tab. What else? Replays, I think, are all local. Yeah, that's all here, so that's fine. Feedback tab, what do we do here for the release notes? That's a new tab, so that's correct. Huh. Yeah, so we're just inconsistent with that. So yeah, that's a good change. What about maps? Nope, fail. Okay, maps tab. Did I just lose my I think I just closed it. That's funny. There it is. Okay. Competitive tab, maps tab, etc. Just go through and find them all. That should be a pretty low effort thing to do, and that is an enhancement as well. So that's a good suggestion from Crit. Thank you. EU links from replays go to new tab. Do we have EU links in the replays? Where is that? Oh, the I right here. Yep, that's in a new tab. Yep. Stop. Spammers, go away. Yep, the icon. Good. Okay, yep, that's a good. Let's get that in. And let's say this is planned. Feature request has been submitted internally. Why don't I just copy it here? Duh. All right, good. Thank you, Crit. That's a really good suggestion to add to the site. We'll make that happen. So that is all that we received the last week or so. Give me one moment, and then we're going to switch gears to feature building. Okay. So I have two things I'd like to work on this week. One of them is a bit of I don't know if Hail Mary is the right word. It might not work out. It might be a bit of a mess. I'm not sure that we're even going to add the thing that I want to build, but it's a thing that I've been waffling on for the last week, basically. And I need more eyes on this because I am not smart enough to figure it out. So we're going to try that. And then we're going to shift gears to something else mod related. And I'll talk about that when we get there. But the first thing I want to talk about is tiers for ranked. And this is something we've talked about more than once on stream before. It has to do with making sure that the number of players who are active and playing ranked games lines up with the number of tiers that we have on the site. And that's very relevant for creating games, because if you have a bunch of tiers with players who do not play in them, then those players, when they do occasionally log on, will never get games because there's nobody to match them with. So what I'd like to do is talk through a theory I have that we should be structuring our tiers a little bit differently at the state that the game is in right now. So let me try to zoom out a little bit. So right now we have 8 tiers on the TagPro site. You have tier 1 through 8. You have a small tier at the top. This is better with the visual. You have a small tier at the top for the top 5% of players. You have a slightly larger tier, slightly larger, a pretty large, and then smaller and smaller toward the bottom. So basically it's a bell curve kind of thing. And I can actually show you now because I got paint.net working, which is great. So right now with your tiers, it's kind of one of these guys. Oops, that didn't work. Close enough. And you've got your tier 1, your tier 2, your tier 3 and 4. The lines don't really matter. The point is that there are more players in the middle than there are on the fringes. And so right now, the problem that we're running into is that tier 1 players are a small category, but they play the game a lot. You can see some of these game counts. They've got hundreds of games, sometimes thousands of games. Some players with almost 3,000 games, which is honestly impressive. So these players play a lot. So anytime they log on and want to play games, more often than not, they are going to be able to find a game because there are other players who are also playing that game. But at the bottom, with these guys down here, these are the players who are weaker, yes, but they also are the players who just do not play very much. So when these players log on, there's nobody to play with because there's nobody playing. Like, there's nobody down there who actually is playing TagPro. So how do you fix this problem while keeping this distribution of players? Because you don't want these players mixed in with these players. That wouldn't work ever. Because there's a reason they're separated for ranked, but you need them to be getting games. So what I've been trying to workshop is, instead of skill-based distributions, can we integrate some sort of games played distribution on top of the skill-based distribution? And so what I've been trying to do with this is, say you have this distribution of skill ranks, but you also have a check or like a cumulative number of games played by all players. So say we have, let's pick an easy number. Let's say we have 10,000 games played across all tiers at all skill levels. What we want to do with that number is say how many of those 10,000 games are played here, how many are played here, etc., all the way down to the end. And then can we evenly distribute them within those tiers so that games are being created equally at all levels? And I need a better way to display this. 10,000 games. So yeah, I want, so it's gonna be like this. Okay, so right now, if you take all the players who have played the game and you put them out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way down to a couple hundred players, at the top, maybe they played 500 games, maybe this one played 600 games, whatever. And now you say you have your 10,000 games distributed across all these players. So instead of saying that we want the players distributed by their 5%, their 15% cutoffs, we're going to say we want 1n, and n is the number of tiers that we have. So let's say we have 8 tiers. Oh no, here's what we're going to do. We're going to use numbers that are fake because it's easier to do that. So we're going to say we have 3 tiers. We have 120 players. Bear with me on this. It's going to get better in a second. We have 3 tiers. We have 120 players. And let's say that the first 40 players, so the first 40 players, those would typically be your tier 1 because you have 40 players per tier. So you would say 40, 40. So you have 40 players here. You have 40 players here. And you have 40 players here. I know the slope is not accurate in this case, but just bear with me on it. You have 40 players per tier, and you have 3 tiers. And for those 40 players, maybe there are, doesn't matter how many games are played. Let's say 100 games are played. We're going to use percentages, so it's irrelevant. But let's say that the first 20 players in here account for 50%. Or sorry. Let's say that these 40 players account for 50% of the games that have been played on the whole site. So it's 25% here. Oh my goodness, 25 and 25. So right now, half the games are being played by 1/3 of the players. So can we, with this in mind, skew this distribution so that instead of having 40 players in each tier, we have 30% of the games played in each tier? So you would say, how many players out of these 40 do you need to put into tier 1 before it gets to 33% of players? And so let's say that'd be about 20 players, and that would be your tier 1, and they would have 33% of games played here. Then you have 100 more players in your 120 with 66% of the games. how do you split those 100 players up so that 33% of the games are played at each section of that 100 players? So maybe it would end up being, I don't know, pick a number. Probably easier to do 50 and 50 probably, but it'd probably be more like 40 and then 60, right? So you actually, the largest tier that you have would be the bottom tier, and that is our counter to the fact that those players at the bottom are not playing very often. So if I probably lost everybody at this point, but what I'm trying to show is that instead of evenly distributing the players based on preset percentiles, 5%, 15% of the skill score, you evenly spread them out so that the number of games played at each level are the same. And what you can do with this, which is why I think it can work, is that as more games are played at the bottom, because these players are actually getting games, now this number is going to go up because there are more players down here. And maybe they play a bunch because there are so many of them, this gets up to 40%. Well, what you do in that case is you recalculate these daily and you say, okay, we have way too many games being played down here, so now we can scoot a couple of players this way. So now maybe you go up to 45 over here, and I can't erase as well as I want to, but so now maybe you're, yeah, that's not gonna work. Sorry, not that good with this, but so now, okay, you have 45. Why did it get so thin? Oh no. There we go. 45 over here. And you can see how over time, it should naturally come back toward this actual skill distribution with 5% of the players here. So what you do on the flip side of it, and I'm gonna get rid of all of this because I'm just, this is a mess. But what you do with this is that you have this same curve in the back of your mind and you say, okay, ideally, this is only 5% of the players. But until there are enough games played over here, this is actually going to be lower than 5% because it's only going to be that percentage of games played, but this is still the maximum. So you don't have a situation where these players start playing more and more and more, and you get to the point where there are an equal number of players in all three tiers, because you don't want 40, 40, 40 when you have 8 tiers. Just bear with me. You don't want it evenly spread because you want fewer players at the top, you want more players in the middle, fewer players at the bottom. So as all those games are equal across all 3 levels, or all 8 levels in North America, you have an upper bound. So you say that as more and more players are shifted this way, you stop adding players to tier 1 once it gets to 5% of the total population. So what I want to do, now that I've set that horrific premise, is try to quantify in some capacity how we would go about doing that. And so again, we're going to do something that's a little more approachable after this. So sorry for kind of sucking you all down this tangent or rabbit hole, but I'm going to pull up a document real quick. And I'm going to grab something that I typed up before. So, take all active players, distribute them evenly across, no, sorry. Going to copy paste a thing that I built, and then we'll rephrase it so it's better. So if there are 120 players in 3 tiers, but the top 40 players account for 50% of the games, half of those 40 players are in tier 1 and the other half are in tier 2. The remaining 80 players are split between tier 2 and 3. And then you say that take the total number of games, divide that by the number of tiers. Yeah, so you take total games divided by total tiers, and that would tell you how many games there should be played per tier. And then you add players in one at a time from the top tier, because they're sorted by skill score. Okay, add players in one at a time from the top tier sorted by skill score until that number, until X threshold is crossed. That is your boundary for that tier. And then you continue to the next one. Okay, so that's that. So basically why I did this on stream, because it was not fun. Picked a bad Dennis Live focus. Sorry, yeah. So the reason I did that on stream is because I want that to be out there so that somebody can see it later on the recording and then let me know if I'm full of crap or if that actually has some merit to it. That's a larger discussion that's going to need to happen. So we're going to shift gears now into the actual feature building thing for today. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm still showing you the paint.net. Oops. Anyway, doesn't matter. We are going to move on to the other thing that I wanted to work on now. So I had an interesting conversation with somebody on Discord a couple of days ago. They were talking about moderation standards, kind of how we moderate, what we were trying to moderate, and then how we could plan to actually scale moderation in the future. And that scaling question was an interesting one, because right now our standards and our application of the rules is not terribly scalable. So I wanted to talk through a couple of easy things that we could be adding that would help integrate newer players to the community, make sure that they understand what the rules are, and then how to actually follow them without being disruptive, and then how to not over moderate in the process, because a lot of automation involves removing gray areas and kind of cutting out corners, but doing that can sometimes result in over moderating because you're trying to do too much to cover all edge cases without having to have somebody manually reviewing all these cases. And a really easy example for this is the appeal system that we have right now, where you have a preset length of a ban, and then you have to go back and forth with the mod team and then decide what the actual length is going to be. And that's a lot of work for the mod team. It's not very approachable for new players because they don't really want to go through the process of an appeal. So the question is, how do you kind of present players with this information in a friendly format so that it's not becoming a negative as the game gets larger? So this is an open prompt, so if you have any ideas that come to mind, feel free to share them. I do have a couple of things already in mind that I'm going to be writing up here as we go, starting with how players find out what they were banned for. What was I banned for? So right now, if you are banned, all you get is a page that says you are banned. And let me show you guys what that looks like real quick. Oops, I'm not banned, so I can't show you. Hold on, I can ban myself. 1 second. I think the stream might be lagging, sorry. I have a lot of things open right now. Okay, I've banned myself. There we go. So, if you are banned, you get taken to a page that looks like this. It says your account has been temporarily banned. It tells you when the ban will expire and then why the ban happened. Is this due to other players reporting or a moderator banning your account? And then we have a list of some vague reasons that you could be banned, but there's no information specific to your ban or why you earned that ban or how you earned that ban. And this is a bit of a problem, because if you want to find out how you were banned, you could either read through the code of conduct, which nobody wants to do that because it's a pretty obnoxiously long document just because it has to be to cover all the things that you can and can't do. But otherwise, you have to open an appeal and you have to talk to the mod team about why you earned a ban. You like the likely there? What other options? Yeah. So the other options that we have is that on the back end, and I can't show you guys this, but on the other side where the moderators see when they open up the mod tools for an account is the player's name, their reserve name, their alternate accounts, their ban history, so how many times they've been banned in the past, what they've been banned for, if they're currently banned, muted, all that stuff. But we also have comments where we can say this player was banned for walking the flag back in neutral flag into their end zone. So that ability for us to write comments is very useful for the mod team because we can keep track of recurrent themes if somebody's doing something over and over again, or if we give somebody a warning, we can write down, hey, this person was told explicitly not to do XYZ. If you see them doing that, you can apply the ban this time because they know better, kind of stuff like that. So we have the ability to put comments on actions. So what we could do, that should be relatively straightforward, is present those comments user-friendly comments describing what a ban is for. So now, if you are that player who walked back in neutral flag to your end zone, and then you got tagged there, and obviously that's against the rules, you get banned, you could come to this page, and instead of just saying your account is banned, here's a bunch of stuff with words that don't mean anything to you, we could say, okay, you were banned for moderator comment, walking the neutral flag back into your own end zone. And now you have a much clearer communication where you're telling the player explicitly why they were banned for that game. And this also is useful because sometimes we don't apply the ban right away. Maybe they did that and then that was reported to us on Discord. We didn't see it for about 10 minutes and we applied the ban after that. Now they're confused because they just play a totally normal game and then they got banned for it. They don't realize that it was applied for something that happened 2 games before that. And in the appeal, we would discuss that and clarify it, but they have no way of knowing that if they don't want to open an appeal. So if that was displayed right off the bat, they could say, oh, don't do that in the future. Fine. So I think that's an easy starting point. Yeah, game link in the message, yes. So the other part of that is that monitors don't have access to the back end or comments. So what we do for monitors when they apply a ban is it sends a notification to the mod team so we can review the ban, make sure it was fairly applied and all that. But it also adds a comment automatically to their profile with a link to that game. And so just like Sand Plus Water was saying, the monitor comments should automatically include the game link, but we can do that for moderators as well. So you could say you were banned for walking back a neutral flag. Here's the attached timestamp of that thing that you did. And so the one downside that we're going to have to figure out how to handle is that comments from mods are not instant. And so you need to have some sort of loading thing or like you were banned for category. So we would say you were banned for working against own team. Like the thing they're writing down hasn't been submitted yet. How do you summarize that? You would say a reason has not been submitted, not yet been submitted. Check back soon for the full description, kind of thing. And then they'll know, okay, if I check back in a minute or two, it'll say why I was banned. And that would remove the need. Timestamps are not tracked, just the game. Sorry, I need to cough real quick. 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. So no, for monitors, it's just the game, but I'm saying as a moderator, we have the ability to grab the replay and grab the timestamp, and we could put that in ourselves. So Grant had a question. Are the comments as they are currently something that could be public facing for the player, or would you need to change that? We'd probably need to change that slightly because for the moderator stuff, we might use slightly different terminology that might not be friendly for the front end. I don't know if I have a good example of that off the top of my head. Let me look real quick and see if I can find something. Yeah, no, I don't think I have a good example. So actually, it might end up being fine. I think the only issue that might come up sometimes would be like, no, even that wouldn't matter. I was thinking like if an IP address is there, but it would be that player's IP address if it comes up. So like, sometimes we say that they were banned for like evading a ban that they earned on XYZ IP address, but that IP address would be their IP address, so that wouldn't be a problem necessarily. It would be the ones that have links to other mod tools that wouldn't really make sense. Like if it's a link to another profile that is theirs, but it's the mod tool version of that link, they can't follow that link and it wouldn't be useful for them. It would just be like a profile ID. So I don't know. I think I lean toward just not. I don't know. I'm kind of torn on that. We'll have to discuss that as a team probably. Grant says reason feels redundant with category in the phrasing. Oh, no, so no, it's Grant. What I'm saying is that this would be shown until the mod actually submits their thing. And then when the mod actually says, okay, this player was banned for walking back in neutral flag, it would replace this message with, you were banned for comment from moderator walking back in neutral flag in this game, link to the game with a timestamp, kind of thing like that. So not both, just one or the other, based on whether or not they've submitted. So for community bans, would say you were banned for 3 times working against 2 or 3x offensive chat, and then 2x AFK too much kind of thing. And that would be fine as a comment on its own because you know it's a community ban now. And then for, yeah, okay, exactly though. In my head, like working against own team feels like a reason, and then there's another reason that is the more specific reason. Yeah, vote. I'm just using the act. It would be the full thing. It would say working against own team, not vote. But I don't feel like typing all that out. Like AFK too much would be that. It would be offensive, insulting, harassing chat. I think I'm missing a point that you're making though, Grant. You're saying in your head, working against own team feels like a reason, and there's another reason that is the more specific reason. I don't know if I agree with that. No, I see what you're saying. The problem I'm running into is that they're more headers for the code of conduct. That's what all the rules are named after, are the headers for things you can't do. So it's like you were banned for a category of offense, and then explaining what you did within that category that you went wrong with, I guess. But that is arguably just 2 different reasons. So I see your point. If we're looking at scalability, having mods make a comment on every ban seems burdensome. Well, yes and no, because one of the goals with this approach would be if we can get this to a point where it's always super clear why you were banned, we could start to shift away from having an appeal system. And we can say instead of an appeal system where it's a back and forth conversation, it could just be players requested a shorter ban or whatever, and we could say yes or no and take action on that instead of having to have this whole discussion back and forth, which is very much not scalable. But listing why a player was banned is kind of a necessity, and that could be automated to some degree, sure. With the monitor team, that's a big help, but I don't think we could ever fully move away from listing why a player was banned because we need that information in the future for making the correct decision going forward. So you were banned for AFK too much. A reason has not been submitted. Well, the reason was like I was AFK too much. Yeah, so but the problem with that is that AFK too much is not only not moving and just like leaving your computer. Like there's another... let me grab the code of conduct real quick. So AFK too much also can include if you were spending a lot of time typing in the game, which isn't technically away from your keyboard, but if you were spending a significant amount of time typing non-productive messages in chat, that is AFK too much. And we usually assess that as a mute, not a ban, so it's a little bit different, but like there is more to it than just AFK too much. Like somebody might say, well, I wasn't AFK, I was there the whole time, but they were banned or muted because they were there the whole time but not actually playing the game. So it's a little bit of nuance, and that might come down to the code of conduct. Does the code of conduct need a change to reflect that difference? Maybe like a different rule that's not named AFK too much. It's like typing too much kind of thing. But I don't know how much we can do that without still requiring some communication with that player about what they did wrong. So I don't know. I agree what you're doing. I agree with what you're saying, Grant. I can't figure out how to balance it. A reason is not yet been, so I guess, is it a wording thing where you say instead of a reason has not yet been submitted, you're saying a comment has not yet been added, and we just say it's a reason and then a comment? Does that work for for what you're saying? A comment has not yet been added to this action. Check back soon for the full description. And that, okay, I think that makes me happier as well. So I like where you're going with that. Yeah, and the community ban's fine. Monitor bans. With the monitor bans, it's easier because they're always going to be banned for the game that they were in. For those not aware, monitors are an extension of the mod team where they are only able to apply bans and mutes for games that they are currently playing in. So if you are banned or muted by a monitor, it's always going to be clear what you were banned for because it's always going to be the game that you were just in. So you're not going to ever have that problem of being banned 3 or 4 games later by a monitor because they can't do that. They're not allowed to. So you would just have to include action and link to replay, and it should be a little bit more straightforward there. Why is my filter blocking LMAO? That's annoying. You were banned by the community for you were banned by community reports. Is that you're banned by community reports? I think get rid of the word for. Oh gosh, what have I done? Stop that. Banned by community reports 3 times working against own team. 2 times offensive chat, 2 times. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Good. Cool. So that's one thing. Probably the easiest thing. Thank you both for your feedback there. Anything we're missing on this one? I think that covers it. And that's a lot more scalable because the number of appeals that will be opened way down, which will hopefully trend towards not needing appeals at all. All right. Other thing. This one's a little bit more complicated, but it's talking about the automation of warnings to some degree. So right now, if you have tips enabled, you might see what this looks like. But if you are doing a certain thing, like maybe you popped, like you ran into a spike, it'll give you a chat that says you touched a spike. Like, don't do that. Basically, I forget the exact wording, but it's things that you do in the game directly trigger certain messages in your chat. Like if you grab the flag, I think it says like stay away from the other team, or like the other team grabbed your flag. I need to look into what the actual things are, but if we could have some sort of similar automated system for warnings where it says you are holding a neutral flag and you're sitting in your own end zone, don't do that. I think that would kind of get ahead of it for some people, because there are definitely cases where a player comes in for the first time, they play a capture the flag game where they grab the flag and they're supposed to bring it back to their own side, and then they join neutral flag and they do the same thing. They grab the flag and they bring it back to their own side, but that's working against now because they're actually supposed to bring it to the other side, and it's not super clear to somebody who's never played the game that you're supposed to bring the flag on the opposite side now instead of back toward your side. If you haven't seen that there are different game modes, you have no real frame of reference to know that that's the wrong thing to do. So if we could have some sort of system that would look for things that are very clearly not correct, and it would warn players in chat that what you are doing is not what you're supposed to be doing, I feel like we could cut down on the number of players who need to be manually warned, who get yelled at for being new for just a basic thing, and then needing bans to be applied, which is a good thing to reduce long term. So if we could figure out a couple of examples, I'm going to start with that neutral flag one because I think it's the easiest one, but there are some other cases that we'd need to unpack as well. So these would need to be displayed in a different color so they're not blending in with the tips. Yep. Okay. And then you've got examples. Walking back in neutral flag. If the player grabbed the flag let's say if the player is sitting in their own end zone or is in their own end zone with the flag for 3 seconds, something like wrong end zone, you need to bring the flag to the other side of the map to score in this game mode. Anything like that. Slightly interesting to tune the parameters. If I take it back to base to set up a handoff, do I get the warning every time? Yeah, so I think that's why you need to say they need to be in there for a couple of seconds, because if you're just sitting, well, yeah, that's a good point, because there is a case where you're sitting in your end zone waiting to spike. So I guess the other part of this, this is based off the discussion that I had with that player. They were saying that for these warnings, do you only have these warnings kick in if you've had a certain number of reports in the past 24 hours? Only kick in with X number of reports in the last 24 hours, stuff like that. Sorry, give me 1 second. Yeah, I hate being sick. Okay. Degree-based thing. Yeah, that's a really good point. So this would be, I think that's actually way better than X number of reports. I think this would be only for logged out players or players with, I don't know, 5, 10 degrees. 10? Let's go with 10. Because players who are lower than 10 degrees probably have not figured out the strategy of sitting in your own end zone to hand off the flag to their teammate. And if they have, they're going to be outside of 10 degrees pretty quickly with their wins. So if you got warned but you're doing a 200 IQ play, I would feel good. Well, that's okay too. Boosting backward with the flag already ahead. That seems pretty niche. I'm looking for like blatant don't do this kind of stuff that a moderator would need to act on. So another one here would be blocking your own flag carrier within 3 tiles of the flag. This is a thing that we see sometimes for players who actually are working against. Like if they get mad, they just start blocking their teammates. Talked about button sitting. Yeah, so that's probably something worth adding a message for, though. Yeah, let me grab that ticket real quick because that's a good point. Where did that go? This was a suggestion, I think, from Bald Eagle, if I'm not mistaken, where we had said that when a player sits on a button for an excessively long time, add a smoking indicator currently used for potato flags to say that self-destruct soon, which means that you're going to pop in a couple of seconds. And we were saying that if they sat on a button for 20 seconds, that should pop their ball to, 1, discourage players from spending the entire game on a button, and 2, make it clear with that smoking warning that they should move soon. But if we also had this integrated with a message that says, don't sit on the button the entire game, how do I word this? You'd probably warn them after 10 seconds. What would you say with that? Move. Sitting on a button without participating is rarely the right decision. I don't know how to word that. Somebody can do better than that, but that's going to get us started. Spiking yourself repeatedly. Yes, good one. Repeated spiking after spawning. And this would be not including spawn kills from a TagPro. It would have to be hitting a spike. And we can tell what popped you apart pretty easily, so that's not a problem at all. Spiking intentionally can result in a ban. Please participate in the game. What else do people do? Well, I guess the code of conduct would tell us what they do. Let's see. Fighting for regrab, that's probably something. Oh, you did right as Grant said it. You and I, Grant, we are same page here. You would need to say that if a player was not, so if a teammate is on regrab, player initiates contact with that player and maintains it for, I don't know, 2 or 3 seconds. Don't fight your teammates for regrab. This can result in a playing ban. And so that would be, the distinction there would be that it's only the player who was not initially on regrab starts fighting the player who is on regrab. Because you don't want the person who's on regrab getting fought for it to also get the warning, because they were there first. So that would be a good distinction to make. Do you check if one has an RB? So I would argue yes, because we do actually have an exception in the rulebook for this. Where did that go? I thought we had something about this. Is it the example of what bans doc? Yes, so stealing regrab or knocking teammates off of regrab without the possession of a rolling bomb. So we do accept rolling bomb stealing of regrab. And then we would nullify this check if the player has a rolling bomb. Should I keep that open? Maybe this has more. Some of it's just silly stuff. Oh, look at that. That's funny. Leaving the home base instead of capturing the flag despite no pressure from the other team. So this is saying that if you have the flag and you're coming in to capture it and you just don't, that's bad. Does that really need a warning though? I feel like that's pretty explicit. Not all. Well, I don't know. For a new player, what motivation does a player who's never played before have for walking into their own base with the flag and then not capturing it? I feel like the only case I can think of is that they know it's not supposed to be a cap because it's 4v3. So what do we gain by warning for that? I would say not much, because a brand new player is never going to do that. They're probably never going to be past 4 to cap in the first place, but anybody who's not capping there kind of knows what they're doing, I think. So I don't think that's worth a warning. Oh, this one's really good, actually. This is a really, really good one. Remaining on regrab in a neutral flag game for excessive amounts of time. That is really good to have a note for. Sitting on regrab in a neutral flag game for, let's say, 5 seconds. Regrab is great, but not in this game mode. Chase the flag to help your team. Neutral re should be auto ban. I tell this story, so this is a little tangent because why not? When I have a new application to the monitor team, I always sit them down. We go through their entire application. We talk about a bunch of common things that they might see day to day. And we talk through some clear examples of players working against or borderline cases to discuss what they should do in certain situations. And we always talk about the neutral flag player sitting on regrab. And the example that I use is a player who, for about I want to say 6-week period, was convinced beyond all doubt that the correct strategy for neutral flag was for them to wait on the regrab tile. And this was not like a player trolling. This was not somebody who wanted their team to lose. This was a player who, when warned, was doubling, tripling, and more down on the fact that if their team capped or if the other team capped, they would be in a better position to capture the flag. And this went on. We kept joining games, warning them, saying stop. They kept saying, no, it's working. It's the right thing to do. Back and forth. After about 6 weeks of this, they were banned a couple times during that 6-week period. Their neutral flag win rate was 15%. And so we kind of had a come to Jesus moment where I was like, dude, like, I get that you're trying to do what you think is right, but this is so clearly not working. Like, you need to stop doing this, please. you're every game that you're in, you're just causing your team to lose here. This is not a valid strategy. So that's the example I always bring up with the monitors, because you're going to get people who don't think that they're working against when they do some of these things. But you kind of have to draw a line at some point that this is just not a winning strategy. You need to participate in the game. So we try to warn for this. We don't like to ban for this outright. In that case, they were so committed to it that we had no choice. But it's just always makes me laugh when I think about that. Let's see, I missed a couple of comments here. I feel terrible when I run to regrab thinking it was a walking cap and then somehow they botch it. Now I'm stuck in no man's land. Yeah, nothing you can do about that though. Going back to regrab fighting, see above. Sand plus water, I'm going to need you to elaborate on that. I'm not following. Maybe they played rocket balls that one time. Yeah, it might work in rocket balls. That's fair. I don't think they were around when rocket balls was a thing. It was a pretty young account at the time. But yeah, it's a good one. So let's keep going here unless... okay, there should be some memory to that. What? Oh, you copy pasted something. Okay. There should be some memory to that. Okay, I can see what you're saying, but I'm not sure how we would quantify that. So you're saying that if somebody's on regrab and they get knocked off of regrab and then somebody takes regrab from them, that person should be justified in fighting for regrab? Is that what you're getting at? Or is it that the person who stole it in the first place should be warned and not the person... I don't know how to... I know the situation you're talking about where somebody gets knocked off and the person who gets knocked back is in a better position to take over regrab, but the player who's in front just sits there and says, nope, I got here, deal with it. But I don't know if we can really... I need to pull up a map just to kind of demonstrate what I'm thinking of right now. So... Milano's a good example of this. So if I'm on the map Milano, and actually I can use my paint.net for this. Let's do this. Okay. So if I am on Milano and I am on the blue team, oops, that's too small. And I'm sitting on regrab. And my teammate is on a bomb, trying to chase the red flag carrier or whatever. The details don't really matter here. But say that this player here gets bombed into this player here and knocks this player into the back of the base. So then everything moves and you have one player here and now one player back here. And this player was originally on regrab and this player was not. So maybe they're like here and here. So I think what Samples Water is saying is that in this case, technically this player is entitled to regrab because they were already waiting on regrab and this player was not. But in this case, this player is farther ahead, and say the flag carrier is over here or something. So the correct play in this case is for this player to start pressuring the flag carrier, or at least to move up a little bit. This player should be assuming regrab because they are farther behind the play. So that's all well and good. But I think what's happening in this situation is they're saying this player will sometimes just go to regrab, sit on the regrab tile, and this player is kind of out of position to do anything. I mean, technically there's a sniping opportunity here, but I think more often than not in a public casual game, this player is going to want to take their regrab back and continue to wait there. And that's not everybody's situation, but what we're trying to figure out is there a way to quantify that if this player takes regrab and this player wants it back, is there a way to warn this player and not this player? I don't know if that's possible for us to do. And if you disagree with that, I'd like to hear how you might go about it. But a decay to on grab. Yeah, I'm agreeing with Grant too, because if, for example, like say that they started here, this bomb goes off, and they get knocked to like here and here. Okay, in this case, like very clearly, this player should just start chasing, and this player should take regrab. Like you'd have to go backwards out of your way to get back to regrab. So like regrab would go to the player who ended up there in that case. So it's a bit of nuance for where does that second player end up off the ricochet that decides who should get regrab. And I don't know, like you're saying something about decay, where if this player was on the regrab tile within the last few seconds, and then this player ends up on the regrab tile, do you warn that player? I don't know if we could really consistently do that. Like, yeah, you're saying 3 seconds. Like, say this player got knocked off, and then 1 second later, this player's here, but maybe the flag carrier got knocked up to here, and this player needs to be on regrab to prevent that capture. Like, they shouldn't be getting a warning mid-game because they were preventing the capture because this person's all the way in no man's land. Like, even for this example, if they got knocked like here and here, and the flag carrier's here, like you want this person on regrab. They wouldn't since they're not fighting. Okay, so you're saying that this should only come into play if you have the player here and this player comes back and they're like, I want regrab. You're saying this player should get the warning if this player is like, yo, give it back. I see what you're saying. I just don't know how do you quantify that? Because even here, I could make the case that this player should be going for the chase. They're in a worse position than this player is to be on regrab. But I don't know. This is one map in one specific scenario. I don't know if we could reliably do that. I like what you're getting at. I just don't know if we can do it. I don't know. Seems like warning on refighting is too hard. Well, I think the basic one that we did before is fine. Because we don't want, no matter what we do, we don't want this player fighting. Oops. We don't want this player fighting here, ever. That's not productive. Paintbrush. Like, this situation is always going to be bad. We don't want this. Even if this player is entitled to regrab, we still don't want this back and forth fighting for the tile. That's not good. So warning this player, I think what you're trying to say is that we should not warn this player who's trying to take their regrab back because they were entitled to it. But I just don't know if I can justify that because, like, yes, they should be entitled to it, but they're also not on the tile at that time. I don't know. I've never agreed with somebody so much and not been able to help them so much in this case. It's just like, I don't know. Starting a fight, yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying, Grant. Starting the fight is never the right play. Like, you're just wrong. I'm sorry that this player is an ass and took your regrab, but they have it now. Play on, kind of thing. Because it's promoting like a tit for tat kind of mentality, like eye for an eye, which is nobody wins in that case. Like the other thing I think about in this case all the time is, okay, yes, you have these two players. One of them is entitled to regrab and one of them is not. But they also have two teammates who are trying to play the damn game, right? And these two people are trying to go about their business while their two teammates are just fighting over regrab because one of them was entitled to it. Like you have to think about the rest of the lobby after a certain point where it's not worth prioritizing this person over these two people. In that case, that's kind of where I land on it, I think. But I don't know. So I think I see your point, but I'm going to go with no for now, so we can just move on to another example. But not wrong. You're not wrong. That's my final answer. Where were we? Okay. What else do we have from this document? Spending excessive amounts of time trying to fit between two gate tiles on maps like Kepler or Box Turtle. Ah, yes, the classic deliver the flag map. This one's probably going to be covered in a rule that we already wrote with intentional spiking, because we can include spiking on spikes and gates the same way. So that's easy to add on the back end. Yeah. So then we've got repeatedly passing through nearby portals. This is an interesting one. This one comes up, I wouldn't say often, but it does come up where you got the player going between these two tiles. The challenge with this one is that a lot of the times it's benign. Like, it's not really a negative, but I think this also comes back to what Grant was saying about low degree versus high degree. If you are a 100 degree player and you're passing through these portals, there's probably a reason that you're doing it, or you at least know that it's safe to be doing so. If you are 2 degrees, maybe you're just doing it because it's fun to pass between the tiles, and it's fine to enjoy that, but they might not be realizing what's going on the rest of the map to know that they shouldn't be doing this in that situation. So I think that we can add in this passing between nearby portals repeatedly. And I'm sorry, I need to cough again, so I'm going to disappear for a second. Just make the threshold super high. Would that be like the number of portals that you take in like a 10-second period, or would it be like a no timeline at all, just 5+ portals in 10 seconds? I'm trying to think of cases where you could do that, but it wouldn't be a negative. So I think one thing you'd have to clarify, it would have to be 2 linked portals. Because if you have another map like, do we have any maps like this right now? I'm not sure, actually. I'm looking through a couple maps real quick. Yeah, like a horoscope type map. Is there a way for it to be productive for you to be going between these portals? Maybe probably not. It's not really conducive to anything that you'd be trying to do. Wildflower? Let me pull that up real quick. Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so if you're on Wildflower, like, are you just going between the portals because the play is doing that? So you'd need... I feel like that's not really as fast. Cat scratch chasing. Yeah, because you can go out one and then back into it, right? And I don't think that's really a negative. So I think it would have to be that you enter the same portal multiple times in a certain number of seconds without ever exiting from that portal. Does that work? Is that too... Hello, Josh61616TP. Thank you for the follow. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it has to be a little bit just like Sand Plus Water was saying, a higher threshold. Because there is a valid play there. I think Combine, sometimes players go between these portals. Is that productive? Yeah, so maybe you just look at key presses. Are they only holding one direction, maybe? You might hold up and down. Why is this so hard to quantify? I thought this was going to be super straightforward. This is frustrating. Hellier, nah. Hellier's got that portal here. I don't know if you can really go between those though. Combine. Yeah, that's why I was just looking at the combine. You can go between these here a bit, which is like, it's a play like once or twice. Sometimes like you'll boost through the portal and then that momentum takes you out of the portal back into the portal, but that's never more than like twice. So I think if we just said like linked portals, I don't know, seven times? Is that a good cutoff? Figure out how many are useful. How about 5? Nah, 5's too low. I'm sticking with 7 because I'm going back to the original example on Whiplash. Like, if I go through this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that's nothing. That could happen in a couple of seconds. I don't know. I'm trying to think of things that could happen in a real game scenario. Would you ever go between them 5 times in a real game scenario? I might, because you're trying to like stay high momentum while they're setting up a play over here, and you're waiting for them to come down on which side so you can pick which way to go. So you're keeping that momentum as you go. But if you're 2 degrees, again, you don't know that strategy. So I'm going to go with 7. I'm going to keep it. I'm keeping it. I'm pulling rank. On maps like Whiplash. What do you say for this one? Repeat portaling is fun, but not productive, not helpful. If you ignore it. That's too many words. Nope. Portaling is fun, but don't forget to help your team. Ignoring the rest of the game can result in a temporary. Is that too harsh? Is that not harsh enough? What do you think? Yeah, I think that works well enough for me. If you disagree, let me know. Not too harsh. All right. Bringing neutral flag to the wrong base. I think we covered that already. That was our first one. Wrong end zone. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Boating. Huh. I don't know if we can really do anything about this because it's not breaking the rules until it's too late. Like you can't warn somebody that their failed boat might result in a ban without them having already failed the boat. So it's already the ban. And we don't ban for this all the time. We ban for it depending on the context of the game, but I don't know if we could really do anything with boating. I'm going to leave that alone. I'm not going to do that. Constant refreshing. That's an interesting one. I don't know if we ever really see this with new players. Like the players who constantly refresh, you've got muted players, you've got players in competitive games, I guess sometimes ranked now too. I don't ever really see a brand new player joining in and just refreshing 20 times. It's not a thing that happens. So I don't think we need to worry about that too much. And then stealing regrab, we covered already, if I'm not mistaken. We got okay, well that's a pretty good start, at least. Any other last things on that one? I've got a couple more things I want to add in that are smaller. Not seeing anything, but happy to come back to it if you think of something. So we've got sending players what they were banned for, why they were banned, with an actual reason, or the community ban count, stuff like that. Refresh to avoid being tagged in neutral flag is too high level. Yeah, that's something we're gonna work on with a different approach. I think we have a ticket for that actually. Let me check something real quick. I think what we're trying to do right now, or we're planning to do, and we just haven't gotten to it, is when a player refreshes in their own end zone with a neutral flag, we just award a capture to the other team. Yeah. If a player is in their own end zone and refreshes or disconnects, award a capture to the other team in the process of resetting the flag. And then it does not cover all cases because we don't have close to the end zone, but it is already against the rules. So yeah, I think that's not something we need to worry about for new players. Well, this wouldn't be new player specific. I think that for anybody, when this is added in, we should just edit this post and say that when a player does this, when a cap is awarded, the player who refreshed should receive a chat message. Refreshing in your own end zone is not allowed. Your opponent has received a capture as compensation, and a report was placed on your account. And that way players would go, oh crap, I shouldn't do that, because they get yelled at. But that doesn't have to be anything to do with the new player thing. That could be just for everybody, because that's not specific to new players. So that's boom. Okay, where were we? Back to here. So other things that I was talking to that player about. Actually, this was not that player. On Discord, I was talking with a group of people about animal names and muted players. For those who are not aware, if you have a chat mute placed on your account before the ranked release for all public games and for, I think, private games for a while as well, but we fixed it, your name would be replaced with an animal name picked from a list of about 100 animals, extinct and not. We have some dinosaurs in there, I think. But basically, in the old days, players would get muted and then they would change their name to my name muted so people would know. Then they started abusing that, so their name would start being like a slur. They would start targeting somebody with their name. And so we figured out pretty quickly, the mod team at the time, I was not a member, that players couldn't be trusted to have agency over their name if they didn't have agency over their chat. So the system that they added at the time was to just add a random name each game so that you couldn't chat, nobody knew it was you, and you couldn't change that display name. When the ranked release went live, actually, no, let me back up. When competitive games started having problems with this, because the competitive leagues have a rule where you have to be playing with a reserve name in your games, but players who are muted were then joining in with these animal names, so that you couldn't prove in the game that it was the right person. So that was causing problems. So the devs added a fix to that, where private games, you would keep your reserve name, but you still couldn't chat. But in ranked, we have the same kind of rule where you're supposed to play with one account. You're supposed to have a reserve name. You're not allowed to play with a white name, and your reserve name is locked for the season. So if you are muted right now, no matter where you get muted in your ranked games, you have your reserve name all the time. So the question that came up, and I don't have a reason not to do this, was if we're already doing this for ranked games where we're locking somebody's name, they cannot change it, and it's their reserve name, why do we need to have this animal name system anymore if we could just lock a player's reserve name as their name? And I think that that's totally reasonable. So this is also a bit of a problem for some players, because they would get muted and then they wanted to go look at their tagpro.eu history, but they couldn't find it because tagpro.eu was only using reserve names, and they would only have a display name with an animal name, and it was changing every game, so they couldn't keep track of what games they had played, and it was a whole thing for them. So reserve name locking in casual games, we currently use a rotating animal name system to prevent players from changing their name to something not allowed, with the addition of reserved name locking. We have the ability to prevent players from changing their name. So the questions that we have to answer are, oh, I just happened, I lost it. Come back, please. Oh, come on. Darn it. Oh, I was in the middle of typing and I had the thought and then it just left my head. Oh, that's what it was. It's if a player is muted, do they lose the ability to change their reserved name? Grant, it's always Grant. You're right there with me. So if the player is muted, do they lose the ability to change their reserved name? So if they were playing ranked, yes, their name would already be locked, so they wouldn't be able to change it anyway. But say we're between seasons, between season 0 and season 1, for example, all reserved names will be unlocked. You will get a chance to pick a new one before season 1 starts. If you're between seasons, or maybe that player has not played ranked, do you apply that same mechanism where they cannot change it? Otherwise, you run the risk of players doing exactly what I just said, where they change the name to something that's not allowed. So I think the answer to this has to be yes, by the same mechanism that ranked blocks it. This requires some small changes because I think that we block name changes in ranked games and from the profile. So we would have to add a system where it checks if they're muted and then just doesn't let them change their name. That should be super straightforward to add. Yeah, that's easy. What else would have to be considered for that? Leaderboards, probably not a big deal. Those would continue to work the way that they do now. I don't know, anybody got any considerations? What if they got muted for their reserved name itself? That is an excellent, excellent point. What if the mute was applied for their name? That is a huge point that we need to go through. So the mute system right now replaces your name when the mute is applied. So I think we would need to add a check box, add a checkbox to the mod pop-up. So right now, if a moderator clicks on the report screen, it's similar to what a player sees, where it's apply personal mute, report, cancel, I think are the 3 options. For moderators, it's apply mute, apply ban, cancel. We don't have personal mutes for moderators. But you can also select what the ban was for, stuff like that. So I think if you apply a mute, you would just need a checkbox that says revoke name or something like that. On mute. If selected, player still receives an animal name, maybe? An animal name. And then the other question is, what do we do to stop that name in the future? So what we do with a lot of names that are not allowed is we add them into the chat filter and just say, this name is now blocked, so you can never use it again. We would need some way to know. I think, no, the logs would have it, because the chat logs would say this player joined the game, and then that name would still be there for later. So I think that's fine. But what do you do for the next game? So does that player have their reserve name immediately revoked so that they don't even have a reserve name? Because if you go to, I don't know if I can find one of these easily right now. Yeah, sorry, I don't think I could find one really quickly, but sometimes a player will have a display name but not a reserve name. Oh, here's one. I found one. Nice. And when that happens, you'll see their current display name and then a little unlocked symbol, basically saying that this name is not reserved. It's just a display name. They don't have a reserved name. So would you just revoke their reserve name and revoke their display name and just make their display name Sumball, just so it looks exactly like this? Would that be fine? Probably. Because when you're thinking about the next game that they join into, you don't want them to have no name, but you don't want them to have their reserve name. And if this is theoretically replacing the animal name system, although you could have a fallback to the animal names, I guess. Let's say revoke reserved and display names on mute. Set display name to Sumball. And then, yeah, if it's just Sumball, then you don't need to have. So I guess the question is then, does that player get to choose a new reserve name for the duration of their mute, or do they just not have a name for the entirety of their mute? I don't know if that's really a good system. I don't know. Let the moderator pick a name for them. Stinky Head. That's your name for 6 months. I guess you could pick. No. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how to handle that. Yeah, after your mute, you decided to play ranked, you would need a reserve name of some kind. How many characters is Sumball? S-O-M-E space B-A-L-L. So we don't have the characters for more than a certain... No, that wouldn't work because there'd be too many, potentially. Wait, no, what am I talking about? It's 12 characters, right? Yeah, so we need to have 900... We need to have 1,000 players muted for their reserve name for that to be a problem. So why don't we just assign them a Sumball and then a number reserve name, maybe? That's not super clean, though. I don't love that. Could do no spaces. I feel like we need an answer to this, though. Because the other thing is that right now for ranked, I have the ability to unlock a player's reserve name if they needed to do something with it. Like for the like the cat bot on Discord and for the TTOC bot for a while, players would use their reserve name to verify. And so I have the ability to unlock it so they can change it. But for a muted player, the mechanism that I use to unlock wouldn't work. So we'd need a new mechanism for unlocking if we wanted them to pick that name. So I feel like we need to just assign them a reserve name. I mean, you could just name them like muted player as like a name and shame kind of thing, but that seems kind of rude. This might be something I have to take to the mod team to discuss a little more. Use your 12 character name randomly picked. Yeah, I mean, it's better than anything I have so far. Just don't get muted. Duh. Well, the other side of it, you can say that if that player received a mute and their name was removed, do they even need to be muted for that? Or do you just allow mods the ability to revoke a display name or a reserve name and you don't apply a mute at all because they don't have that name anymore? And then, yes, they can go pick another one and maybe something happens there, but I don't know, do you get stuck in a cycle of players just picking more and more names that aren't allowed? I don't know. Because you can't play ranked if you don't have a reserve name. So if they kept picking names that weren't allowed, and they kept having their reserve name revoked, they just wouldn't be eligible for ranked. And for casual, they would just continue to get Sumball as their display name. Yeah, that's the thing, is like if there being such a problem that they can't pick a name that is allowed, first of all, how are we not stopping them from picking those names in the first place? What are we missing on our end that they're finding this easy to follow trend of names that they can use? Because as soon as they pick one that's not bannable and try to play ranked, it's locked. So it's like they just need one. And we have a pretty robust filter at this point. So yeah, I think the better option is to separate muting away from names again. Yeah, I'm gonna write that down. That's better. Revoke name as a separate option from mute if a display name is revoked. Change that. Do you like name and shame them? Change that player's name to their reserve name? Hold on, I have a thought about that. If the reserve name is revoked, use Sumball for the remainder of the game. Then the consideration is if the display name is revoked and the reserve name is actually worse, it's also not allowed. I guess they would just need to click it twice, like revoke display, then their reserve name pops up, then revoke that one too. It's not the best option, but it works, I guess. So that's fine. And then any games they play without a reserve name, they're just going to be Sumball. If they want to play ranked, they have to pick a reserve name. If that name is also not allowed, then it would just get revoked the next time a moderator crosses paths with them, which is going to be pretty soon probably. And they just wouldn't be eligible for ranked again until they pick one that does work. So that's fine. That's fine. I feel like I'm going to find some problem with that later, but I think that works pretty well. Yeah, and that, I don't know, does that have anything to do with scalability? I feel like that's actually less scalable than the current system, but I feel like it's better regardless. Yeah, I'm gonna go with that. That works for me. Somebody watching this recording later, feel free to correct me on that, but I think it works. And then the appeal system. So I want to talk about the appeal system a little bit more because right now it kind of sucks, honestly. It's a different site. It's not hosted on the TagPro site. It is old. It is hard to use for moderators. It is annoying to use for players. It has a captcha that we added because it kept getting spammed by crawlers. I don't really want to have an appeal site at all. I'd rather come up with a better solution for appeals that does not involve chatting back and forth. And so I won't spend too much time on this because we're getting up towards that 2-hour mark here. But does anybody have any initial thoughts on that? Kind of how do we allow players to say, I don't agree with the length of the action that was taken, but not have it devolve into a back and forth conversation that if the game grows by a factor of 10 would just become completely unsustainable immediately. How often does somebody negotiate themselves down successfully? It's a really good question. I'm going to say not often. I'm going to say probably 20%, just to pick a number. I don't know how accurate that is, but it's probably close to that. And I think that's a good starting point for this conversation. More often than not, appeals are for discovering what a ban was for and not for reducing the time. So a lot of bans that end up getting removed are the ones that were applied incorrectly or the ones that were like a shared IP address, or it's like a VPN and somebody's like, hey, like I'm trying to play on this VPN, but it's saying that I'm blocked because somebody else did something on it. And those don't require any back and forth because it's just, yeah, this is a messy backend thing that we'll clean up for you and you're good to go. The ones that really are these long, drawn out discussions are your serial repeat offenders who clearly just don't agree with our moderation standards, which is fine. We're a little more strict than some other communities, but there's nothing that's really going to be gained on either side. Like, we've had so many appeals where it was just like, these are the rules, don't do these things, and they're like, those are stupid rules, and we're like, I'm sorry you don't like them, but this is the same standard applied to everybody. Like, if you don't follow it, you're going to continue to get muted or banned. No change in the length of the ban or the mute. So I don't know. Give me 1 second, please. So what you can do is you can keep the general framework of the appeal system where a player says, I can't do X, Y, or Z. I can't play, I can't chat. I don't agree with the fact that I can't do that. But if we've already given them the why, kind of coming back to that first point that we made with the displaying what the ban, or I guess what the mute was for, just gonna apply for both. If we show them the why ahead of time, they don't need to open an appeal just to find out why. So they would need to open an appeal if they disagree with the length or if they disagree with the fact that it was applied at all. Do those two things have to be separate, or can we find a way to put them together? And then can we put them in a format that doesn't require additional discussion or back and forth? Like, you would have to be kind of a one and done thing. And part of the problem I run into is that if you go down this path, I feel like we're offering a worse experience for players who don't understand certain things. But this is that scalable question, is we don't have the moderator numbers to really have this conversation over and over again with certain people if the game grows, is what we're thinking towards. So how many times do I have to report Fender to get him banned? You cannot ban somebody on your own. It's 8 reports in 24 hours. Is the length always directly proportional to the number of bans, or are there things you could do for offense number 1 that gets you immediately 6 months? No, it's usually just the 1 hour to start with. The only time you jump straight to 6 months is if you're ban evading and we don't know who you are. So we're just like, you're not supposed to be playing. We're not sure what your name is, but we know that you're not supposed to be playing right now. So we're just going to ban it, which doesn't happen all that often, maybe once a month. And it's usually like your Pyruvate equivalent player. So it's not really a big deal. So I say, yeah, more often than not, it's proportional to the number of bans, although there is some leeway there with stuff getting reduced, but I don't think we don't really reduce all that many. It's either remove or not remove. That's the other thing I want to talk about is report system. Thank you, Dolph, for the reminder there. We'll get to that in a second. So is there a way to reduce the complexity of the appeal system down to a single message request? I don't like this ban. It should instead be 0 hours with a single response from the mod team. Yes, here is your reduced sentence. I feel like weird saying sentence because it's just TagPro, but here's your sentence versus No. um, let them appeal, and then just no discussion, just the ban's been. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Is that if we remove the discussion part of it and say you're allowed to say you disagree with it, we're going to look at that, maybe look a little closer at why it was applied, and then let you know what the final answer is. And that's it. Like, there's no chance to reappeal. There's no chance to argue about it. That would at least be more sustainable on the moderator side of things. My concern is trying to think of cases where we had a discussion and we were able to come to some sort of agreement or solution that was more workable for both sides. But I what I'm trying to say is that I think the way we do it now only works with the size of the community that we have now. And if we do get larger, I don't think we really have a choice in this matter. We have to go towards an approach that's more cut and dry, fewer gray areas, because what else can we do? Otherwise, we're just going to be inundated with appeals that aren't going to be adjusted. So, yeah, I don't know what that would look like on the back end. I think that's going to be something I talk to the mod team about more to figure it out, but that's good enough for me for that talking point. We'll come back to that later. Report system. This is a more relevant one for now. And this has come up before as well, but right now the way reports work is you get reported by a player, fine. That report sits on your account for 24 hours. If you earn 8 reports in that 24-hour period, your account receives a ban. The length of the ban is determined by the number of previous bans you have earned for any reason. I don't like that system because it's slightly biased against players who play a lot. So just in terms of background noise, everyone's going to earn a report here or there just from somebody who throws one out. Some players obviously earn more reports because they play a little more risky or they make some bad decisions. But that's not necessarily worthy of a ban if you're playing a lot. So say you're somebody who plays, pick a number, 100 games in a day, which is probably not possible. But if you're doing that and you're earning 8 reports, comparing that to somebody who played like 7 games and earned 8 reports, it's very clear that one of those players is more of a problem than the other, but each of them is receiving a ban for basically the same reason. So I think what we should be shifting the report system toward is a game-based report system where reports roll off after a certain number of games played. Instead of reports rolling off after a set number of hours passed. And I know that we can do this because in the ranked release, sorry, one second. In the ranked release, I added a system where if you have a ranked disconnect, you have a requeue penalty. I think a lot of players are familiar with that because we had some bugs early on where players were getting those without actually voiding games. But the recovery process from that is game-based. So if you play a ranked game and you void it, and then you play, I forget the number, 20 games and you don't void those, it offsets that one void that you did have. So players who are more often than not playing fine don't get these excessively long penalties after a couple months of playing because the good games that they played are enough to offset the occasional bad game. And I feel like with reports we can do something similar and say that if you played 10 games and you didn't earn a report, you can remove the one report that you earned in a previous game. And I'm not sure if that needs more nuance with like, should that one game only roll off if you earn no reports in those 10 games? Like, does the 10 games start from that first report that you earned, or does it start from the most recent report that you earned? So say, for example, you earn one report in your first game, then you play 2 more games, and you earn a second report in your 4th game. By the time you get to your 11th game, are you at 2 reports, or do you go down to 1 report? Because that first report, it's been 10 games since it, so you should roll it off. Or does it not roll off because it's only been 6 games since you earned a report? Like, do you have to go 10 games clean to start losing the first one? Yeah. Anyone following that? If I'm losing you, let me know. but I'm not sure which one is better for a report system. Because you want to reward players who play a lot without punishing them for reports, but you don't want players trying to game the system where they know that they can act out every X number of games because they're not going to get enough reports for it to matter. I don't know. The math on that's a little tricky. I think it might have to be based on number of like long-term reports too. Like you'd have to say, if this player's earning, I don't know, 10 reports every week, maybe it only rolls off after 20 games for them, but somebody who earns 1 report a month, maybe their reports roll off a little bit quicker. Most of them have a good sense of what those numbers should be. I don't have a great database to pull from on this. I'm mostly just going off of what I know from what I see, obviously. But we can do this without actual hard numbers. I just want to figure out the right premise for this. So do reports roll off after X games from the initial report or X games from the most recent report? I'm just going to write the example I just talked about. If game 1 equals report, game 4 equals report, does game 1's report roll off after game 11 or game 14, for example? Any way that ban decay can be shoved into report decay? Yes, I think probably it should be. Automating ban decay is a thing I've wanted to do for a while. It's just a not fun process because you have alternate accounts, you have IPs that are handled differently from accounts. Putting that all together is not going to be a good time. It should be done eventually. I need to do that because I'm so tired of handling manual ban decay requests. But yeah, not a thing we've done yet. But yeah, I think that could be in a similar vein. So then other questions is, does X vary by player based on report frequency in the past? Does that use game-based or time-based counting? 5 reports in a week versus 5 reports in 100 games. Hello, Mr. Doodle. Hello, Thanos Ball. I think I lean toward the second option here because you want to reward clean streaks. Like you don't, because if you go with the first system where it rolls off after 10 games no matter what, you know that you can do a certain number of things every 10 games and not be penalized for it because it's going to roll off eventually. But if you're getting it every few games and they start to accumulate because you're not getting 10 games in a row without doing something, that feels like it's actually forcing you to not break the rules. And that's how the ranked system works. It's number of games that you go without causing problems or avoiding a game to get that number to start to decrease. So I think I would lean towards using the same approach for the report system. And honestly, with the ban system, like Grant was just mentioning, that does work about the same way, where you say how many games does a player need to play to get a ban removed from their account, and if they ever get banned again, you're restarting that count. That's how we do it right now. If you go 6 months without earning a ban, your first ban is removed, and then it's every 3 months after that an additional ban is removed. But if you ever get banned again or muted, that count resets, and it's 6 months from your most recent action before you can start to decay every 3 months again after that. So applying that same logic to the report system, you would say that your first report rolls off 10 games after your most recent report. And I'm not setting the number 10, I'm just using that for the sake of the conversation. And then I guess every 10 games after that, I don't see a reason to really change the number on that such a small time scale. Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to have to run this by the mod team, see what they think. Obviously, if anybody watching the recording later has some thoughts on this, feel free to share them. But it's a much more scalable system because this is in theory going to reduce the number of community bans that are earned. It's going to really make sure that community bans are only applied to players who really deserve them, not players who are just playing often and happen to rack up a couple reports along the way. And that's less of a problem now with the size of the community that we have. I think in a larger community, that would be more of an issue. Thinking about like abuse, reporting abuse, things like that as well. It seems very Bambi friendly. I don't know about that. He earned like 6 reports in one game once, but I guess you could say that. Also, hi. Hello, Yappa. Yeah, okay. Those are my thoughts there. I think that lays it up pretty well for me. I'm trying to think of any other moderation-related things that need to be adjusted / streamlined / set up in a way that they can be scaled. I don't have anything else off the top of my head, but no, I think I'm happy with that list, and we're at 2 hours. So that's probably a good time to wrap it up. So, just to summarize, these are not changes that we're putting in short term. These are more longer term plans, thinking about what we start working on after the big 3, the ranked release, the in-game shop, and the Steam release. This is thinking about how do we scale things a little bit better in the future for the mod team. Because the current way that we run things is not sustainable at a larger scale community. So just kind of getting ahead of that conversation. Anybody watching the recording back later or anybody who tuned in late, there was another kind of tangent I went on talking about tiers and distributing players within them. I probably lost everybody who was talking at the time about it, but I really think it's important that we talk about how to distribute players at different levels so that games are being created evenly across it. So feel free to watch that recording back later. Let me know if you have any thoughts on it. I have to talk one-on-one with a couple people who know this kind of stuff better than I do, but I promise I'm trying. That's all that matters, right? So that's going to be it for me for this week. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Like I mentioned earlier, there is a form pinned in the chat here. If you have any questions that you don't want your name attached to, feel free to fill that form out. I will go through the answers to any questions each stream each week. And that will be that. So I'll get the recording up soon. I'll put that post up on Reddit. A lot more views when this went up on Reddit, so I'm going to keep doing that. I think it's the right call for transparency. Again, we're still working on that next release, which will finalize ranked, looking at October 22nd as our target date, with testing starting before then. So keep an eye out for that. I will be in touch with you all soon, and have a good Friday and a good weekend.